Hey trendsetters, it's your girl Heidi, and I'm here today on Real Talk Conversations and Community Conversations with Monica Singleton Cassaberry, and we're going to talk about her son. Her son is another one that had a tragic ending due to gun violence. He um he was 22. Right, Monica?
Yeah.
22 when we lost him and in 2011. And Monica is here to tell us her story. Welcome, Monica. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for even giving me and others the platform to even do this. Our stories really need to get out there because I feel like they get swept under the rug and enough attention is not even, kept on us. It's on everybody else, and that's sad, you know. But yes, my name is Monica Cassaberry. Well, Monica Singleton Cassaberry. And September 19th, 2011, my son was on his way to the store for his son. And as he was going down the steps to, go out of the house, he went towards the corner on, this happened on Green Avenue in Bed-Stuy. He went down the steps. He was going towards the corner. As he was going down towards the corner, a man brandished a gun from the Patchen Avenue side and came running down. My son had just taken off a full leg splint, and he tried to get in front of, in between a Jeep and a car, and that's what he did. But the gunman had a long range. He shot one time, and my son was struck in the back. It went through his heart and pierced his lung. He stumbled to the front of the house where then his 2-year-old son saw him, and he collapsed. And that was the last time his 2-year-old son saw him.
Mm.
And this happened at around 9:53 p.m. on September 19th, 2011.
Tell us a little bit about your son even before this whole thing occurred, and then we're going to talk about getting that phone call and whatnot
Very
after that.
loving, very caring, very, very family orientated. A pain in my butt, you know how that goes. One of those, I don't need you, Ma. I don't need you, Ma. Next thing you turn around, Ma, can you do this? Ma, can you do that? Okay, but you don't need me. One of those. But he even did a lot to help the neighborhood, neighbors. They loved him. Everybody that knew him loved him. He was always a helpful person. He wore his heart on his sleeve. And it's sad that unfortunately his father wasn't a part of his life. And here it is, somebody literally took his life away from him, and now his son has grown up without him as a father. That's horrible.
and 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 this is a young man who wanted to be a part of his son's life and was a part
Absolutely.
of his son's life.
Yes, he was. He did everything, you know. Yes, I'm gonna say he smokes marijuana or whatever the case may be. Okay, okay, fine. But he made sure he made a way to make sure that his son was provided for. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of men, say that they're gonna do X, Y, and Z for their children, and then they can't take the pressure. They walk away. He didn't do that. When you saw my son, you saw his son. He would bring his son to my house, which was diagonally across the street, and it's just like I said, it's just sad, because the black and brown communities need to understand we need to spread more love. There's no reason for all the hate and animosity. It really isn't. For what? A name this, a name that. Most of the people and designers don't even like us. They don't even want us buying their products. But we'll spend top dollar when we're the only ones doing it, and it's kind of sad. It's sad, but just to lose, I hate that word lose though, for a life to be taken so tragically at such a young age, and my son unfortunately was shot, I think 5 or 6 years prior, mistaken identity, and he survived. And I'm like, okay, he's good. We ain't got to worry. We ain't got to worry. And then, like I said, 5, 6 years later, now he's gone. How do you transition from healing him to burying him? It's just not scientifically correct that a parent should have to bury their child, especially for something such as horrific as this. It's horrible.
And this is the reason why we have these platforms, and this is why, it's so important for us to have these type of conversations with you guys, because you know it's not addressed enough. and this is something that happens repetitiously in our communities. I mean, as soon as you turn on the news, this is what we
Yeah.
hear. As soon as you turn off the news, this is what it ends with these type of stories. So, you know, and it's just a story, but it's not the story. And what I mean by that is it's not the mother's story. It's not the individual's story. It's not the entire story. So to have a platform where you guys as family members and loved ones get to tell the story of how this impacted your life
Hmm.
since. Like, getting that phone call must have
Yeah.
been traumatizing for you. How did you even hear or find out that this had happened?
I don't even remember exactly who called, but I do know that a call did get placed. I know that they told me, and I'm sorry to say, that he was going to Murder Hall Hospital, because that's what I call it, unfortunately, because majority of the people that make it to that hospital, they gunshot wounds, they do not live, unfortunate.
That's
But
what
Woodhall, yes. Um, so when we got there, we got in the cab and we went there. I was first a little annoyed because as upon entering before we even entered the hospital, EMS was, washing down the gurney that my son's blood was on.
Mm.
So that's number one. I didn't realize it was his blood until I got into the hospital. I got to the hospital, I'm knocking on the door, I'm like, excuse me, I'm here to see my son. He was brought in, he was, gunshot wound victim. The security guard there, well, hospital police, was very nasty. Go sit down. I said, excuse me, like, who are you talking to? I said, I'm here to see my son. I heard he was brought here. Bring me to my son. So he was trying to get a little bit argumentative. And, us as mothers, we think we're the She-Hulk. So I kind of took over and I just kind of got a little like, you're not going to talk to me like that. So I started banging on the door. So the other hospital cop from the inside, he came to the door and said, well, ma'am, you can't come in here right now. And then hospital administration was like, well, can you come into this room?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Before they said that, in my heart of hearts, I already knew my son had died. I felt it in my spirit. You know, um, we went into the room and they said he didn't make it. And I said, I didn't even cry. And that's the weird thing. I really didn't cry. I said, no, I don't believe you. He's still, I was in denial. I said, no, I don't believe you. I want to see him. I want to see my son's body. I want to see my son's body now. The hospital administration was like, well, we don't normally do that. I said, well, you're going to do that today. I said, because you can tell me that's my son. I don't know that's my son until I see that's my son. So it took them about maybe 10, 15 minutes. They cleaned him up. They allowed me to go back there, which I was very mad about that as well, because my son dead body was around people who were living, being triaged by other doctors. I thought that was the worst thing they could ever do. How do you have my son, my precious son, my second born, among living people? How do you do that? And then, they try to make it seem like it's okay. No, it's not okay. Certain things are not okay. Certain things you will not do. And I'm not going to condone. And I said to them, I said, why is my son here? Like, why do you have him here and all these living people are around him? They can see this. Nobody's dumb. They know what's going on. And who knows who knows who? Who knows if somebody who shot my son could be right here in this very room? We don't know,
And what
you
about the
know.
trauma of those people that's experiencing?
Exactly. And he's a
You
youth.
know,
He was 22 years old, but I was blessed that they did let me see him, and that was the blessing part of it. But the only thing that kind of gave me solace is the fact that he didn't look like he wasn't suffering anymore. It
mm.
wasn't like his face was like estranged, or he looked like he was in pain. It looked like he had like a little smile on his face, and that was kind of strange to me because I fought with that for a little while. It's like it looked like like it wasn't a smirk, but it was like he had a little smile, like he was at peace. And I was like, you know what, Jamal, I got you, baby. I know what you're telling me. And then I had to jump into super mom mode, and being being super mom is a beautiful thing when you
What is
want to
that?
be,
What does
not when
that
you
even
have to be.
mean, Superman? I'm confused. What's Supermom?
I have 4 children, three boys, one daughter. I still had two younger children. So it's like, okay, my eldest son, he was incarcerated at the time. So I had to go home, call him, and let him know what happened. And then I'm dealing with the third and the fourth born. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I cannot just settle. I cannot just be like, okay, Monica, it's just about you going through this mourning situation right now, because you have to kind of be strong, not only for yourself, but you got to be strong for them as well. Because I'm seeing them hurting, and them hurting is making me hurt. And I'm like, oh no, I can't let them see me cry because I don't want to break them, you know? So that to me is supermom mode, not not allowing our children to see us cry at a time when we know that they need us. We go into the room at night, we might cry, go into the shower, scream, holler, have the music blasting, because that's what I was doing. But you don't want your children to see that, because you don't want them to feel like, all right, now I don't have anybody to turn to right now because mommy, she's not going through it right. She's not thinking correctly. So I don't want to be a pain. I don't want to do this. So it's hard.
Maybe it is okay for them to see you going through. Sometimes in our black and brown communities, we put on this facade and this super woman cape because we feel as though we have to be strong. And sometimes we forget that we all going through it, right? So they probably
Yeah, we
felt the
do.
same thing that you felt. They had to be strong for you, and you feel that you had to be strong for them. And
Yeah,
everybody's not realistically dealing and processing their grief properly, right? So this is how come
right.
sometimes all of that festers in our being, in our system, and causes other type of sickness. So sometimes you hear while people going through grief, they suffer from mental health issues or even
Yes.
physical health issues, and
Yes, we do.
that's
This,
because
this,
we
this,
haven't
whew,
released
this
that out of our
is.
system properly, and somehow it just got trapped someplace it wasn't
It
supposed to be.
does. It really does. Because my son was killed diagonally from where I used to live at. I used to live at 984 Green Avenue. This happened at in front of 977 Green Avenue. That's where his baby mother lived at. You know what I mean? That's where he stumbled to the front of the house at. You know, um, Shortly
Wow.
after that, my family and I became displaced because I couldn't take it no more. I couldn't take coming out of that building and seeing when my son last took his last breath. So we ended up going to my brother's house on Pilling, and shortly after that, somebody came to that apartment, well, that house, shot my sister. She's not by blood, she's by bond, but we grew up and we've known each other forever, and she was shot 5 times in her torso. Thank
Jesus.
God she survived and she lived, you know what I mean? But it's like I just went through this with my son, you know, we're getting ready we've already actually had the wake, and it's so ironic to the wake that day. Oh my goodness. I will never forget it. It was raining sheets. When I say raining sheets, it was raining sheets of
Wow.
water where you
Wow.
could not hardly see. We had a lot of cars because I had him his wake inside a church, and then I had him cremated. But when I say sheets, I never, and I've seen it. I mean, I'll be 60 years old in December. So it's like, okay, but it's like, where did this come from? You know, but the sheets were just coming down, coming down, coming down. It was making it hard for us to get to that church. The devil's a liar. You know that, right? Because
Wow.
God got a plan. We made it to the church, thank God, in one piece. And then after we got there, his body got there maybe like 10, 15 minutes later. My youngest son was one of his pallbearers, which I know
Mhm.
broke him. Him and his friends, they were the pallbearers. And I thank God for them, because I don't know how I could have done it, or if I could have even done it. But when my son's body got there, the rain stopped. The rain stopped. The clouds cleared away. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Rainbows came, and the sun came out. It was, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that was my son saying, "Mom, I'm okay." I don't know what it was, but I do know that it was so weird to me because I'm like, it was just pouring down where you can't see the drive. But yet that body got there and everything just left. Everything just left. So I don't know. That part kind of like threw me. But
That's
yeah.
God's way of showing you that He's in the midst of all things and you're not alone, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's a beautiful.
Oh goodness. Whew. Just like I said, even still thinking about that, it it touches my heart, because I know my son would never want me to be miserable. He doesn't want me to be sad. I know that, but again, I have to go back to it's just not scientifically correct for a mother or father or even an adult to have to bury their child. Why is that so the norm now? Like, why is everybody so used to hearing about it? It's
It's
horrible.
not normal. It's not normal, and that's why we have this platform to stand on that. That's not normal, and we can't get sensitized, to this thing reoccurring. We have to stand up and say enough is enough,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
We have to really fight to get gun laws changed. Just like you said, 5 months later. 5 months later, here you go in a situation where someone that you were close to again got shot. And, this is so repetitious in our community. It's not normal, it's
Mm-mm.
repetition. There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And why do you think that we respond in such a way that we could take a life? Why is that the choice? Why do you think that that's the choice?
I'm gonna be
How did it
honest with
come to
you.
that?
I I'm gonna say it like this. I know back in the days, we had so much more going with our lives. Like we used to go outside and be kids. We had activities like jump rope, hopscotch, scully, red light, green light, stuff like that. These kids don't have that now. They have computers, they have telephones, they have social media, and social
Outside is not
media, I don't
safe.
want to say it's the devil, but it has a lot of devilment in it.
Outside not safe. You hear what you said. You got people getting shot outside. So outside is not
Right.
safe. But we as
That's
mothers,
true.
we try to keep our kids inside now,
Inside.
right? And
Yeah.
what's to do inside? The only thing that they can do inside is play the video
TV.
game, or you understand
You're
what I'm
right though.
saying?
You're right.
It's but so
Because now
much,
you can't even go to functions. I remember Chuck E. Cheese got shot up. Movie theaters are getting shot up. And I'm gonna be honest with you, and people get upset when I say this, but I'm gonna be honest with you. How these guns getting here? We don't own the planes, trains, and buses. So where's the pipeline going to? Is it dying? Is it set up that way for us to do this to each other? And
right.
we so ignorant that we're not opening our minds and say, wait a minute, we're not bringing this to the pipeline. So why are they bringing it in our areas for us? So people need to think. They need to really
And it
think. They need to open up
definitely
their mind.
that definitely is a valid point that you have. I hear a lot of guns aren't dangerous, people are dangerous, right? But if the if that's the fact, how is the guns getting into the people's hands?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm gonna be
You
honest with
understand
you. We
what I'm
know
saying?
that.
We're talking about prevention, right? Prevention is
Yes.
always better than cure. So if
Yeah.
you understand that people, and this is just across the diaspora, people, human beings are supposed to be the dangerous ones, right? And we're not colorizing this thing because you can't
No,
colorize.
no, it's no color. It's no color.
So if the people are the dangerous ones, then how are the people getting the dangerous tools, the dangerous instruments, the guns?
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, and it's sad because again, you have to have so many different credentials to do certain things to get certain things in here. So if you really sit back and just think about it, like, wait a minute. we know that, yeah, they might go to Virginia, go to the Five and Dime, go to the gun shop, go to the gun, what do they have when they be having those things with all the guns being sold? We know they might go to a Walmart and get a gun and bring it back, but you can only bring but so many of them back here. So my thing is, again, how are they getting up here where we have community guns? You know, we have, we can call or make one phone call and say, you know what, so and so, I got beef. I need that. And they were like, all right, come to so and so and come pick it up. It should never be that way, because at the end of the day, we used to take a L. We used to fight and and live to see another day. I'm not condoning fighting, but I'd rather you fight each other and live to see another day than you sitting out here with an instrument that can take a life.
I think that we got to move beyond fighting at this point, because we fighting
Oh
one
yeah,
another, and that hasn't helped, right? That's what got us here
no,
in the first place, right? We just have to, create spaces where we could relearn how to deal with one another, and how to deal with our anger issues, and come up with better solutions on how we can be more supportive of one another. And I think that
yeah.
that's
Also, I feel, yeah, you're right about that. But I also feel, what a lot of us, I've been through a lot even growing up myself. So we have to deal with our own traumas,
right.
because some of us have not gone past that trauma, and one little thing can just bring it right back. And we're not
Right.
even realizing that that's what's going on. So we're
Right.
living our life through the trauma that we've had when we were younger, and we don't know how to get past that.
Well,
So we need to be able. People need to understand that getting help does not mean you're crazy. And see, people stigmatize certain things, and it's okay to have a therapist. It's okay to have a psych. It's okay. Because sometimes you need that person who does not know who you are and know anything about you. They're just sitting there and listening. Sometimes you need that.
And- But what we need also in that larger scheme of things is representation, right? We need people who
Yes, definitely.
understand what we go through in our communities and what we live through, to understand, because um being from the other side of the fence and
Yeah, they're
hearing
not gonna understand.
stories about what we going through, we really don't. So it places emphasis on education in our community, so that we can
Definitely.
represent one another. We got to change the narrative of school isn't for everybody, because we've been hurt as a community, because we haven't had people that can advocate for just what you're
For us,
saying,
yes.
our health issues, our mental health issues, our emotional needs, even
Yes.
our financial needs, because people really don't understand what is plaguing our community, and what we have to endure as a community, and the traumas that
Yeah,
we have to overcome through our adversity, right?
you're
um
absolutely right.
mhm.
Absolutely correct about that, because it's horrible, because I have always been a person who feels like, if I can help you, I'm gonna try my best to do what I can, because I know I always felt like, God forbid anything happens to me, somebody would make sure my kids and my grandkids are good. You know what I mean? And everybody's not going to have the same heart, the same mindset as I do. I know that. But even with that being said, you know, as you said, as far as education, even with the jobs that's going on right now, we need to stop going out. They need to stop going outside of where we live at and getting people from where we live at, so they can all understand, and they can understand us more so, because they've been here. They know what it feels like. They've lived the life. Even if they got out of it, they still know how it feels to be a part of this whole area, this whole place. And the place sometimes that they put us in is not a great place. And we also have to learn too that sometimes that because you live there don't mean that's where you're from. And I say that to mean, like, because you've been in the ghetto or you lived in the ghetto doesn't mean that you have to have a ghetto mentality. That doesn't mean that. You can advance past that. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a politician, you can be the president. We don't know who you can be, but you have to believe it.
you know um I want to say this to address that, right? You can't remove who you are from where you are, right? And what I mean
Right.
by that is, It doesn't matter where you end up, you
Right.
always were a part of something from when you started, right? But you can always grow past it, like you said. But the main thing that's important is that you never forget, right?
Definitely.
Right. And a problem that you identified with is sometimes we grow and we move on to other communities. And
Hmm.
that's where we hone our services and our skills and our talents instead of coming back to the very community that needs the most help.
No, I agree with you, but you know what's so crazy? My children, I moved to Howard Avenue with one child. I left Howard Avenue with four children. Okay, I was there for 20 something years. And then I moved a few places. And then believe it or not, I'm not too far from Howard Avenue again. I'm back here. But see, I believe in pouring back into my community because good, bad, right, or wrong, and different, or even whatever I've been through, my community made me the woman that I am today. You know, sometimes you have to go through some hurt and pain, which may not be your hurt or the pain that you asked for, to make you into the person that you become. And I don't want to say like that's okay because it's not, but I think that I try to do pretty good. I
So
try to
let's
pour
talk
back into
about
my
that because
community.
I know that you out there advocating for women like yourself that have lost children due to gun violence and these type of crimes. Talk to us about some of that advocacy that you do with working with women and showing up in spaces where they need support.
Yes. I do court support, crime scene, hospital. I do memorials, I do birthdays, and sometimes if they having something personal for themselves, I do that as well. Because I know when I went through what I went through, I really didn't have anybody there. Like all these organizations that they have out here now, they were not like that. Or if they were, they didn't come around where I was. You know what I mean? So I've always been a person who liked to help others. So because I like to help others, I try to pour myself into being that vocal point that if you need me, call me. I don't care what time you need me. It could be 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Call my phone. If I don't answer you right then and there because I didn't hear the phone, trust and believe me, I'm gonna go to the bathroom one time through that night. I'm gonna get back and I'm gonna call you back. And I just pray that you're up, that you're up or whatever the case may be. But the work is very therapeutic for me. That might sound kind of crazy, but it helps me when I'm helping other families who've been impacted by gun violence because I know a lot of them don't know the steps that it takes because I can't tell them what the steps are. Everybody's steps are going to be different. Their steps are not going to be the same steps that I took. You know, I know that you can start from 1 and go to 10. You can go from 10 back to 1. I know it's a whole lot of steps that they can go through, a whole lot of emotions, a whole lot of crying. I mean, it'll be 14 years for me, September 19th this year. I cry sometimes, you know. But I thank God that He gave me the strength to do what I do to help other families. And I feel like my he's smiling down on me saying, Ma, you go, girl. You got this, you know. And that helps me. It really, really, really helps me. And, I'm blessed because he does have a son that's out here, and his son, April 1st, will be 16 years old, immaculate in school, always on the dean's list, always on the honor roll. I mean, this young man I know his father is so, so very proud of him. I know I'm proud of him, and I wish I could do so, so much more for him. But I also feel like there need to be places and spaces for kids like him, you know, and we don't have enough spaces or places like that for him. That people could come out and maybe even help or maybe even say, you know what, let me help you get your graduation thing. Let me help you do this, because it's hard being a single mom, a single father, whomever, and like I said, my grandson, he's a joy. He really is. Jamal Jr., he is definitely making his father smile. I know his father's so very proud of him, and I keep on saying that because again at 2 years old till now, and he's still doing the same thing in school. He has never deviated. I've never in my life seen somebody have 100 plus in a report card. I've never. And I'm a nerd, and I used to get very good grades. But to see that, it's like, so it's a blessing. Definitely a
It is a
blessing.
blessing. It is a blessing. It is a blessing. And it's a blessing and a curse that you have to endure it without your son being here
Yeah,
to share that with his son, with his namesake, you know.
exactly.
Um, but he does have an angel that's watching over him,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
and is doing what he needs to do for him, for his son, and for his whole family.
Yes.
Um, before we leave, this is not going to be the only time that we talk to you, because we spoke that there's so many other different,
Yeah.
things that we need to speak about as well. But before we leave, before we wrap, I want you to plead with whoever will be hearing this podcast about how this thing has affected you, and what we need to do to make this thing stop, so other mothers don't have to endure this type of pain.
Mm. Um, to the person who shot my son, I don't know if you're still living because a lot of times you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But I will say that you have pretty much destroyed my family. We had to rebuild. And not only did you destroy the family, you destroyed the whole community. Because taking a life, that's the worst thing that you can do to anybody, because not only does that family have to suffer for the rest of their lives, it goes both ways, because if you do get apprehended, the only difference is your family can see you, they can touch you. The bad thing about it on my end is my son will never come back through that door. I'll never get it. I love you, Ma. A hug. I'll never get a mom. Make me another sweet potato pie. I'll never have him sitting there busting jokes or doing his little crazy dances. And not only when it pertains to me, but you took him from his son. And I feel that us as human beings, we have enough hurt and pain and things that we go through on an everyday basis. As far as taking lives, that's something that we need to not do. And I just want you to be accountable for what you did to my son. And God forbid if you did it to anybody else, you need to be accountable, you know? So I don't. mm, I just want anybody who has actually pulled the gun or pulled the trigger and killed anybody to be accountable for their actions, because you never know that life that was taken, it hurts that family mentally, physically, medically. I've had 2 strokes right after my son. I didn't even know I had it. And then I just found out last year I had another stroke. Didn't even know it again. Blood pressure all over the place. And people don't understand that life is to be lived, not taken.
Hmm. My sister, I share in your pain. I
Thank
share in your pain. This as a mother, this is not easy for us to endure, even in hearing, and hmm, having other children that suffered through this and are suffering through this, family members, including yourself.
you. Yes.
Enough is enough, you guys. You know, to everyone who's out there and thinking that this is a joke, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. This mother's pain, this is not a joke. You know, what this family had to endure and what families across America have to endure at alarming rates. I'll say it again. It's like we at war. Our numbers are the same. We got to stop the nonsense. We really do have to stop the nonsense. I thank you, Monica, for sharing your story.
I thank you, Heidi, for even allowing me to. Thank you for
Mm.
this platform. Thank you so much.
And it's unfortunate that you'll be one of many that come on and tell their stories. And hopefully you'll be back and we can all, sit down and talk about, these tragedies and try to make it make sense.
Thank you.
You know, you take care. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much
Yes,
for being
ma'am.
a part of this. You
Thank
stay
you.
there. Let me sign off, but you stay right there so we can touch bases. All right. Trendsetters,
Okay.
as always, we're out. Peace, people. Thank you. Thank you so much. And really and truly, if you know anyone that's been involved, or any mother or any family that needs any type of resources or any type of assistance, Monica is here. I'm going to put her details where you can reach out to her directly, and she'll show up. She's part of this community that we have with mothers, for mothers that have lost loved ones. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much for all the work that you do. Trendsetters, we love you, and we'll see you next time. Peace.